Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We are learning Mishnah Yoma, chapter Parak Zion, chapter 7, Mishnah Gimel, Mishnah 3. All right. It'll be a little bit complicated, this Mishnah. Here we go. The first part's not so complicated. Afterwards, it gets complicated. The big day butz kairi. We just talked about how the Kohen Gadol reads from the Torah during in the middle, or rather, we could call it in many ways. All right, during the Yom Kippur service, he reads the Torah, and we said he can read the Torah wearing his white big day kuna, the high priest white clothing for Yom Kippur. He can read the Torah that way, or he can read the Torah wearing regular clothing, even not the priestly clothing. So he says, so Mishna says, "Im a big day butz kairi." If he read the Torah wearing his linen clothing, meaning the white four garments that a Kohen Gadol wears during the Yom Kippur service, so then we say like this: Kiddush Yod Raglav. He washes his hands and feet. Remember that there was the kiyar, the laver in the courtyard that they would wash their hands and feet. So he would wash his hands and feet. Pashat, remove the white garments, because before you remove the white garments, you wash your hand. The Kohen Gadol washes his hands and feet. Yarad v'taval. Then he goes down and he immerses himself in a mikveh. There's a number of times already that the Kohen Gadol has been immersing himself in a mikveh between different parts of the service. Now, so at this point, if he read wearing his white linen garments, he washes his hands and feet. He removes the white garments. He goes into the mikveh. Allah, he comes up in his topic and dries himself off. They brought for him his golden garments. Remember, the golden garments were the regular 8 garments that he wore all year round. The lavash, he put them on. The kiddush of Raglav. Now again, he washed his hands and feet, because that's what you do. Before you take off the white ones, you wash your hands and feet. And after you put on the gold ones, you wash your hands and feet. Okay, now. The yatsa, the asa es eilev es ala'am. Now he goes out from where he was in the courtyard where he washes hands and feet, and he performs and he does his ram and the ram of the people. Now let me read for you just a quick introduction before we get into this section of the Mishnah. And that's here from the Art Scroll translation. The last few chapters discuss the services involving the Kohen Gadol's bull, right? His bull that he brought, the goat for Hashem, the Chatas Hashem, the sin offering for Hashem, which was a goat, and the goat for Azazel, the goat that was pushed off the cliff. However, there were 2 other groups of offerings related to Yom Kippur. The ram of the Kohen Gadol and the ram of the people. Eloi ve'el ha'am, the Torah describes it. His ram, which actually belonged to him, and a communal lamb for the entire Jewish nation, both of which were Ola offerings. Ola offerings means entirely burned. And B, the Yom Kippur Musaf. You know, every holiday has Musaf. It has the additional sacrifice called the Karban Musafim, which consisted of 3 types of animals. And this is important to know for the Mishnah. 1 bull, which was an Ola offering, 7 sheep, also Ola offerings, and 1 goat, which is called an outer Chatas offering. It was a sin offering, and its blood was sprinkled or actually thrown against the wall of the altar outside in the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash, which is what a typical chatas was done with. Okay. The Mishnah will first state that the 2 rams were offered at this point in the service. Then we'll cite a dispute about when the Musaf animals were referred. Okay. But now we got to know. We discussed until now the Kohen Gadol's cow, which at this point of time he slaughtered, sprinkled its blood inside the Holy of Holies and inside the sanctuary of the Beis HaMikdash. He took out the parts that were supposed to be offered on the altar, but have not yet been offered. And the rest of the animal in whole, it and the Chatas Hashem, the sin offering for Hashem, remember they were intertwined, they were kind of tied together and taken out to be burned. Okay? So now after all that, we're discussing now the offerings of his ram and the ram of the people.
Where's
Well, you gotta get me to finish. Where's what?
Where's the out? They burnt it outside.
Outside of Yerushalayim, a special area outside of Yerushalayim for burning karbanos that have to be burned.
All right, not in the
No. Right now. All right. So right now he finished reading. He changed his clothing into gold. The yatsa, And then again, after he washed his hands and feet again, he went to the north. The commentaries explain he went to the northern part of the courtyard, north, which is what's the north of the Mizbeach, which is where he would now shecht, he would slaughter Elah his ram, that's Elah and the ram of the people. The Shivas Kavasim Tamimim B'nei Shana, and the 7 unblemished yearling lambs. These are words of Rebbe Eliezer. Okay, now let me read you from the bottom to get what's going on. He left the part of the courtyard, here referring to the Kohen Gadol, left the part of the courtyard where he had washed his hands and feet, and went to the northern section of the courtyard where he slaughtered the rams. He slaughtered them, the two rams, caught their blood in a bowl, threw the blood against the side. Let me make sure I get this right. Yeah. That is, he slaughtered them, caught their blood in a bowl, threw the blood against the sides of the altar, outside altar, the one in the courtyard, not inside the base section of the courtyard, and burnt the parts of the animal on the altar. It's an oila. That's what you do. You slaughter it in the north. You take its blood, you throw it against the wall that's against the sides of the mizbech of the altar, and then you burn all the parts of the animal. That's what you do in an ola. Okay. Now. So this is what he did. He just did a third immersion in a mikveh. He's wearing his gold clothing. Says according to this opinion, which we're going to read as Div Rebbe Eliezer, he now offers his ram and the ram of the people. And also the 7 kavasim, the 7 lambs that are unblemished within their first year. After bringing the 2 rams, the Kohen Gadol burnt. Now this is important to know, because there are parts here I'm going to mention that are not mentioned in the Mishnah, but the Bartanura cited here in the notes puts it all together, because it's important to know because of the dispute in this in the Mishnah. After bringing the 2 rams, after reading the Torah, the Kohen Gadol burnt the sacrificial parts of his bowl and the he-goat for Hashem. Remember that? He took them out, put them in a bowl, and waited. Now is when, after going out and bringing the 2 rams, that's when he offered those parts that have to be sacrificed from his bull and from the he-goat. The rest of those animals were taken out to be burned. But these parts are offered on the altar. When are they offered on the altar? After bringing the 2 rams. Now, he then immersed a 4th time, put on the white garments, removed the ladle and shovel from the Holy of Holies, mentioned in the next Mishnah. Not mentioned here, right? If you remember, he left the ladle there, he left the shovel there, inside the Holy of Holies.
That was way back.
That was way back. But he left it there. He's got to go retrieve it. When did he retrieve it? He retrieved it now, after the 2 rams were offered, and the parts of his cow and the goat for Hashem, those parts were offered. He had to put on his white garments. He's going to the Holy of Holies. He's got to put on his white garments. Change to his white garments, which means he had to go ahead and immerse in a mikveh and wash his hands and feet twice. Remove the ladle from the Holy of Holies. Immersed a 5th time, because he took off the white garments, and put on the gold garments. Because now when he puts on the gold garments, now he's going to go ahead and bring the 7 lambs. Got to bring those. And that he does in his gold garments. According to Belezer, it was then that he offered all the musaf animals, and they were followed by the afternoon tamid. Now, the only thing mentioned in the Mishnah where the 7 is, it mentions the ram and it mentions the 7 lambs. But part of the musaf offering was not just 7 lambs. There was also a bull, and there was also a goat as a sin offering. They're not mentioned here, but according to Belezer, they were all brought together at the same time. Meaning they were the last ones after everything that we mentioned was done. All the musaf offerings, what we call the musaf offerings, additional offerings, were brought all together at this time. Okay, so again, you've got, after he read from the Torah, he offers the 2 rams. He puts on the mizbech, the parts of his cow and the goat for Hashem. He offers them on the altar. He then goes and takes out the shovel and the ladle from the Holy of Holies. And then he brings all the musaf offerings, which means the bull, the 7 lambs, and the goat for a sin offering.
Does he have help?
No help.
He's shechting all these 7.
He's shechting all of it himself. Now, it could be that we said before, he starts it, He catches the blood. Somebody else finishes it up. That's for the shechita. Everything else, I mean, they brought him the clothing, right? He didn't have to go himself get the clothing. They brought him the clothing. Okay, now, that's Rabbi Elazar's opinion. Rabbi Akiva Omer. Akiva says like this. Im tamid shal shachar hayu craving. You know those 7 lambs we just spoke about? They were actually offered with the daily morning sacrifice. That was way back. That's the very first thing that Kohen Gadol did that day. He brought the tamid shal shachar, the daily morning sacrifice. And he says that the 7 lambs, meaning the musaf offering, was brought then, together right after the daily morning sacrifice. Upar ha'oila, and also the cow, which is part of the additional sacrifice, which is a burnt offering, as were the 7 lambs, though that was also brought after the morning daily sacrifice. V'sara nasa b'chutz, but the part of the musaf offerings, which was the goat that was performed outside, unlike the goat mentioned before that its blood was sprinkled inside, this blood was sprinkled outside. This blood was thrown. Meaning we use the word sprinkling, but it wasn't really sprinkling. If the blood that was gone, that was applied to the outer altar, that was thrown against the wall. But that's what this goat. This goat of the additional offering is called the one done outside because its blood is put on the outside altar. Im tamesh ben arabayim. It was split up from the rest of the musaf offerings, and it was done, just reading the words of the Mishnah, it was done with the tamesh ben arabayim, the evening daily sacrifice. So Rabbi Akiva, what we see from the Mishnah, Rabbi Akiva is arguing on Rabbi Elazar, at least. When are these additional offerings brought? According to Rabbi Elazar, all the additional offerings, all the musaf offerings are brought at the end. They're the last things that are brought. According to Rabbi Akiva, no, they're split up. Some of them, the goats and the lambs and the bull, are brought actually in the morning with the daily morning sacrifice. And the goat, that's part of the which is a chatas, which is part of the musaf offerings, that's brought later with the tamesh ben arabayim, with the evening daily sacrifice. Now, right, not to clarify, because there's still things that are mentioned here in the Mishnah that have to be mentioned, and that is the following. All right, so let me read to you here from the notes. According to Rabbi Akiva, the Kohen Gadol, dressed in his gold garments, offer the 7 sheep and bull of the musaf soon after the morning tamid, before he changed into the white garments and slaughtered the bull and the goat for Hashem. Okay, so the Kohen Gadol is doing, according to Rabbi Akiva, if he's talking about the tamid shal shachar, he's bringing it together with the morning daily sacrifices, then that means that the musaf sacrifices were brought then, before he put on his white garments to now start dealing with slaughtering his bull and the goat for Hashem. Those special addition, not the musaf offerings, but the offerings that were part of the unique Yom Kippur service. Okay, now, Rabbi Akiva holds that the musaf goat was offered immediately after the immersion described in this Mishnah, before the 2 rams are slaughtered. Not mentioned all in the Mishnah, but based on what we find, our Tanura is saying this, and this is based on the Gemara, that actually this goat was not brought in the morning. Wasn't brought in the morning with the other musaf sacrifices. But it wasn't brought together, as the Mishnah says, with the afternoon daily sacrifice. It wasn't brought with that. It's actually brought before that. We'll call it much before that. It was actually brought before he dealt with the 2 rams. It means after reading from the Torah, and he changed to his gold garments, that is when he offered this goat, which is a sin offering, as part of the musaf offerings. That's when he did it, before he even dealt with the 2 rams that were slaughtered. So when the Mishnah says that he brought it with the tamesh ben arabayim, with the evening daily sacrifice, that's not actually when he brought it. It just means he didn't bring it in the morning. Okay, now, in summary, you ready for the summary? The musaf animals, what are you laughing at? The musaf animals were offered when the Kohen Gadol wore the 8 garments. That's right. He put on his golden garments, the 8 regular garments. He wore those gold garments at 3 separate times. When he offered the morning tamid, when he offered the 2 rams, and when he offered the afternoon tamid.
These were the same ones. Change
Sa-
from-
Same gold garment, but he changed back and forth into them.
Yeah.
Okay. This is when he wore them, it says. Rebbe Lezer rules the entire Musaf, the bull, 7 sheep, goat, was brought during the third session before the afternoon Tamid. Right. I mean, it wasn't brought in the morning. It was brought, whatever they call it, the third session. I think they mean after by the third immersion. After going ahead and reading from the Torah, that's when he dealt with the 2 rams, and that's when he dealt with all the Musaf offerings. The Akiva holds the part of the Musaf, the bull, the part of the Musaf, the bull and the 7 sheep was brought during the first session, meaning with the Tamid Shal Shachar, with the morning daily service, morning daily sacrifice, after the morning Tamid. And the other part, the goat, was brought during the second session before the 2 rams, which means after reading from the Torah, and he changed it to his golden clothing, before the 2 rams, he took care of the goat of the Musaf offerings. So that's the summary of the dispute in the Mishnah about how do you deal with the Musaf offerings. Now, what's interesting is that in note number 7, they spoke about how he removed the ladle and shovel after bringing the 2 rams. Right? After bringing the 2 rams. They don't mention, according to Rabbi Akiva, what he did, and we're going to learn about this soon, about taking them out. But I don't see any reason at this point to say that it was any different. He could still have brought it out, according to Rabbi Akiva, after the 2 rams. The question now just is, what happened to the Musaf offerings? What happened to those Musaf offerings? When exactly were they offered? Have a wonderful day.
and
Thank
then-
you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi. Now we went straight into